Thank you, Michael. Great. All right, Craig, we'll roll when you're ready. On June 18th, 1956, 10 mathematicians gathered at Dartmouth College on the top floor of Kemeny Hall for a 6-week workshop on how to make machines improve themselves and solve the kinds of problems now reserved for humans. It was called the Design Workshop on Artificial Intelligence, giving a name to a field that, depending on who you ask, could either save the world or destroy it. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, and although much about AI is still the stuff of science fiction, many practical applications have made their way into our daily lives. Brands like Netflix, Tesla, and Pandora are pushing the boundaries on AI and finding new ways to delight and engage customers. But for many sectors, the field is still wide open and waiting on a game changer. Today on Cold Call, we've invited Professor Jill Avery and case protagonist Julie Bornstein to discuss the case entitled The Yes, Reimagining the Future of E-commerce with Artificial Intelligence. I'm your host, Brian Kenny, and you're listening to Cold Call on the HBR Presents Network. Jill Avery is an expert on brand management and customer relationship management. Before coming to HBS, she managed several world-class consumer brands, including Gillette, Braun, Sam Adams, and AT&T. Julie Bornstein has spent her career at the intersection of retail and technology. She is the co-founder and CEO of The Yes, and the protagonist in the case we're going to discuss today. She's beaming in from San Francisco. It's great to have you both here today.
Great to be here.
This is a special episode of Cold Call. We are actually taping this in front of a live audience at Harvard Business School. Make some noise so they can hear you. That's the audience that's in the classroom. This is one of the classrooms at Harvard Business School where we teach cases every day to our MBA students and executive ed participants. And so we're really happy to be able to do this live taping as part of a celebration of the 100th anniversary of the case method at Harvard Business School. So this is a big day at the school, and we're happy to have several hundred people streaming this as well on YouTube. So we're really pushing the envelope about how to get the word out about Cold Call. So let's just dig in. A little bit later, we're going to open up the microphones to questions from the audience. So be thinking as you hear what our protagonist and Jill have to say. But why don't we start with you, Jill? Because it's the 100th anniversary of the case method, I thought I would just pull the lens back a little bit and ask you the first question about what makes an enduring case? Why is this case one that will endure over time?
Sure. I think to me, the biggest thing an enduring case needs to be is a compelling story. What we ask of our students in the case method is to allow narrative transportation, to take them away, to put them into the shoes of a case protagonist, and to experience the managerial decisions that that protagonist is trying to make. So if I think about what makes a compelling story, it has 4 components. It's a empathetic and relatable character that students can see themselves in. Julie's character came from a recommendation from one of my MBA students who had the privilege of working with Julie as an intern, who came back from her internship so excited about what she was learning at the Yes, that I knew that this might be a great setting for a new case. Biggest contribution to a compelling story is a central conflict that introduces some tension upon which students can debate and disagree. That's what makes a good classroom discussion. And what I'm looking for there is a conflict upon which smart people will disagree, a gray area of managerial decision-making where there's no right or wrong answers. And then I want to situate that conflict into a really compelling setting that has all the complexity of the real world so that students can grapple with that decision in a very real way. And then finally, and most importantly, is a moral or a message, something that the students will take away, a learning objective, the point of the case. What are we trying to teach and what are we trying to learn with it?
Wow. So every case starts with a cold call. The name of the podcast is Cold Call. So let me ask you what the central theme is of this case and what your cold call is to start the discussion.
Sure, sure. Maybe we'll try it out on our studio audience. What do we think? So the central tension in the yes case revolves around whether the company has achieved and demonstrated product market fit. They are 4 months post-launch, and they've amalgamated an incredible input of data, customer data on economics of customers, what they've bought, how often they've purchased, demographic and psychographic data on which types of customers are coming into the business, satisfaction data, usage data, all of this data coming in. And Julie Bornstein and her team are trying to analyze that data to figure out if the company is ready to continue investment and in fact increase investment in customer acquisition. And this is a make or break moment for Julie, because if she invests in customer acquisition too early when product market fit is not demonstrated, then she risks burning through cash inefficiently. If she waits too long, then maybe competitors get a jump on her, and maybe she doesn't feed the algorithm that drives this platform with enough data to be able to optimize it. So my opening question for students is, has the yes achieved product market fit? And this is a big, global, wide open question, which really requires them to look at all the data presented in the case and amalgamate across to try to figure out, where is this company in its trajectory of scaling, and is it ready for future investment?
Julie, let me turn to you for a minute. Maybe you could start just by describing for our listeners what the yes is, what business you're in, and how it came to be. How was it born?
The yes is a shopping platform that is AI powered. And the concept is really, there have been many websites and apps built since the late 90s, Amazon, of course, being the first big one, that you can buy lots of product in. And over the last 20 years, the amount of places to go and buy product has grown dramatically. And the problem today is really overwhelm. Any consumer has to go to a million sites, brands, and retailers for whatever category they're shopping in to figure out what they want, if it's not something that's carried on Amazon. And even Amazon has made it harder because they have ads kind of boosted as opposed to the right products boosted. And so really what we're trying to do is take kind of the capability of AI, which is to understand a user and behavior and be able to adapt the experience to the consumer, similar to, as you said, the way a Pandora or Spotify might do with music, and apply that to commerce. And we started in the fashion category. It's a really complex category to shop, and it's also a really complex category to understand and be able to make good recommendations on. So ultimately, what we've built is sort of a next generation shopping platform where we have a very large brand assortment. Our goal is to have the largest of branded fashion. We're in women's today, we'll be in men's and other verticals in the future. And for the consumer to be able to come in and answer some quick and fairly straightforward, but high signal questions that help us understand her. And then the entire platform and shopping experience adapts to each user. So every customer is sort of shopping a store built around them. And so that is the basic premise of the business. And the reason that I started it was I've been in this space for a long time, for about 20 years. I helped Nordstrom build their e-commerce site in the late 90s, early 2000s. And there were a lot of things I wished we could have done that technology wasn't yet able to do. But I had in my mind all of these things that would be so much more both efficient from a business model standpoint, as well as better for the customer. And so as technologies evolved over the last 20 years, we decided the time is right. Let's take advantage and rebuild the whole infrastructure so that it can be built on this much more intelligent sort of system.
So Jill, you've managed a lot of great brands. I teased a little bit of that in the introduction. Maybe you can talk a little bit. I think as consumers, we're all used to filling out surveys and giving information about ourselves to retailers that we're making purchases from. And we assume all that information is being fed in somewhere to make our experience better the next time we go back to that place to make another purchase. Can you talk a little bit about some of the trends that you've seen in retail as it relates to AI?
Mm-hmm. So we're seeing AI applications all over the field of marketing, from using predictive analytics and data-driven decision-making for new product development input, for product innovation, to media planning and media buying, for using algorithms to drive placing an ad at a particular moment in real time. We're seeing it on pricing, where algorithms are driving changes in pricing within seconds for retailers to be able to maximize price customization opportunities. We're seeing it certainly in customer service, where chatbots are developing and nurturing and managing relationships with customers. So this technology has put its tentacles into lots of areas within marketing, and certainly the retail application that we see in this case, to me, is one of the more powerful, because that's where personalization and customization really delivers something of true value to customers that we haven't been able to deliver before without the technological innovation that's happened.
Generally speaking, though, do you feel like it's lived up to its promise? You know, like, are we serving people the information they need right when they need it, you know, or maybe in advance of when they know they need it?
I would say it depends. The technology's come an amazing distance, even within the last 5 years. So when someone asks me that question, I always hesitate to answer, because 5 years ago, you know, just taking chatbots as an example, 5 years ago, most chatbot interactions with customers failed. Today, much higher success rates with chatbots and customer satisfaction. So every day, the technology is getting better at taking in information, analyzing that information, and putting it together in a way that creates realistic interactions that are personalized for customers. So it's getting better and better. Do machines make mistakes in interactions with customers? Yes, unfortunately, they still do. But I would say so do humans. So, you know, to me, the best solutions here are very much like the yes, companies that combine machines and humans in marketing decision-making to bring the best of both sides to that, to deliver the most value for customers.
And the more information, the better able the service or the machine is to provide the right experience. We're going to get into that a little bit, because there's a tension that presents, particularly in the case of the yes. But let me turn back to you for a second, Julie. Can you tell us a little bit about who your competitors are and how you feel the yes is different from what the others in your landscape are doing?
Well, this is a case where a startup is coming into a very crowded space and there are a lot of competitors. So we are not inventing a category, but we are trying to do it very differently. You know, I would say our competitors today are anywhere that you can go and buy branded fashion. So from Nordstrom and Net-a-Porter and Shopbop. I also think a little bit about even like the companies like Google and Instagram, where, you know, people are discovering new product. And I think the basic way that we're different is that we, for the first time, have built a shopping experience that actually understands you as a consumer, and you're at the center. And so if you go to any of these other website experiences, it's one size fits all. And the experiences, you know, whatever there is fashionable, whatever product is featured on the homepage, that's what everyone gets. And the whole concept for us is we've built this store that's customized to you. And it's funny, when I look at my daughter who's 19 and her home feed for the yes, and I look at mine, I'm really convinced it's working, because I would be offended if any of those products showed up on a homepage for me, and vice versa, frankly. And so that is, you know, our difference is we're really sort of helping sift through this very overwhelming assortment, finding the things that are relevant for you, and then doing a lot of things like notifying you when new product from a brand you like or might like comes in, when a product that you've already said yes to goes on sale. And so it's a very sort of one-to-one experience, and feels more in some ways like you know, some of the media and social media businesses that are geared towards you, rather than kind of, you know, a generic store that you go and you have to find what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, TikTok comes to mind. Obviously, they've done a great job at figuring out how to serve up the content that you would most like to see based on your previous user experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, how does the Yes is AI work? Can you describe a little bit about what the experience is like?
Yeah. So one of my sort of theses in the industry, having been in e-commerce my whole career, is that it's very hard to have a good recommendation system that you built using AI across multiple categories all at once. I really believe you need to understand the specific category. You need to understand what the buying decisions that matter in that category, what the dimensions of that product base is that helps someone to find the product they're looking for. And so if you take the category of fashion and then you compare it to beauty as just another category, the things that go into buying a mascara or a foundation have nothing to do with what goes into buying a dress for an event. And so you need to really understand the category well. We have built a taxonomy that is far deeper than anything else that exists in the market to understand every dimension of a product. And so as you can imagine, it's everything like the silhouette and the shape and is it short sleeve, long sleeve, V-neck, deep V-neck, there's differences, cropped, regular. And then understanding, is it good? So those are objective factors. We also have subjective factors, like it's good for work or it's good for going out. And so we need to understand everything about the product so that as we know what the customer is looking for, we understand what to serve up. Then what we did was we tested sort of a whole series of questions for the consumer to understand where we got the quickest, highest understanding of the customer. And then we ask those questions so we can basically set up a system that does matching. The one thing that is different about also the way we're working is it's not just an upfront series of questions where we learn about you with sort of really important information like, what styles do you like and colors do you like? What do you never want to see and wear? Which is important for, those of us who are no longer wearing crop tops. And then also, we ask things around size, so we understand what's available in your size, and if a brand runs big or runs small, we're able to recommend the right size for you. So we get that information, but then we also continue to collect information on you as you shop. You can yes and no, kind of like thumbs up, thumbs down product as you're shopping. The no's go out of your way. And we sometimes will send you a confirmation to say, do you never want to see string bikinis, which is one that I got the other day. So it's confirming. So we're gathering data, but also confirming the user experience. And then we save the yeses, we organize them, and then we notify you when things happen with them. And so we're learning as you shop, as well as kind of in this upfront series of questions. And all of that information, understanding the category and the product set really well and understanding the user allows us to basically match score every product in the system. One thing I would say around kind of the use of machine learning is one of the things we had to do was train models to understand fashion. So what you would do is we use both computer vision and natural language processing. We take all the text associated with a product and the image, and we basically put it through a system that we've already trained to understand, oh, that's a black ruffled V-neck blouse made of silk. And so it's a combination of visual and text that helps us really understand the product. And so, artificial intelligence is basically allowing us to match characteristics of a product to all the other characteristics of other products, and even sort of understand how close or far they are together. And so you may take an off-the-shoulder shirt and a cold shoulder shirt. Sorry for the men who don't understand what I'm talking about. And, you understand that they're more similar than, some other, than a turtleneck, for example. And so, it's sort of building these models that understand the product and then building these algorithms that understand the match score to the consumer.
So it's incredibly complex. There are so many variables, and basically nothing of what you've described to me fits into my classic definition of a marketer. So, and I'm curious about both of your opinions on this. How do you build a team that's able to compete on this kind of a playing field? Because it's a very different set of skills than, I would think about hiring for my marketing team, let's say. Jill, why don't you start?
So I think what's so exciting about this is everything that Julie is describing is what marketers through history have strived to be, right? Close to the customer, complete understanding of the customer and the product and the interaction between the customer and the product to create value. So what the technology innovation here enables us to do is to be able to get that knowledge deeper and dynamically in real time. As customers change, as culture changes, we're getting that ability to understand the customer deeply at a particular moment in time, at an individual customer level. And that just takes that customer understanding and how we've thought about market research for hundreds of years and brought it into a really exciting domain. So I think fundamentally the skill sets of a marketer are exactly the same, but now every marketer needs to understand how these digital tools and technologies enhance what we want to do around our customers. And that's understand them, understand what their needs are, and be able to deliver against that.
Julie, what does your management team look like? How did you construct that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, my former roles were in more traditional multi-channel retailers. So I was at Sephora and Nordstrom and Urban Outfitters, and even at Stitch Fix, we had merchants, people who were picking product to sell through the store. And we had planners who were deciding how much to buy of the product. We had photographers who were reshooting, they were taking photographs of all of the product, and people who were managing that system to get the samples in. And none of those jobs exist in my new company. We have, my co-founder is an engineer who's done a lot around deep learning and machine learning engineering. And what we needed was we needed a technical team who could build systems. So about half our company are engineers, and we built this recommendation system. We built sort of a front-end user interface to allow us to continue to evolve what that user experience is like and gather information most effectively. And then we have a team that basically has built this system that integrates with all the brands automatically. And so if you think about it, we actually work with hundreds of brands. We take their entire catalogs. We are actually not deciding what to buy, and we're not owning the inventory. So we have no planners who need to actually buy the product. Instead, we take the entire catalog, and then the algorithm dynamically merchandises the site for every customer. So it's an entirely different model. The person that is running sort of what's closest to merchandising is an amazing woman named Lisa Green, who came from Google, and she worked at Google for 12 years, working with brands to think about how to move their marketing budgets from, Vogue and W Magazine and New York Times to Google and YouTube. So she's been helping in the sort of marketing transformation of brands and how to understand and think about customer acquisition in this new digital world. And she really comes more from the business development sales side than from the merchant side. She knows the category really well and has a lot of relationships. And so our team is quite different. We're sort of a combination of, I would say everybody is technically savvy, really interested in sort of where the future is going, using technology, both for customer acquisition, which we haven't really talked about yet, as well as sort of customer experience. And then we have a very robust product management team. This is where we've had some HBS students come in, actually, and Emma, who introduced us. And they're really thinking about what is that experience that we need to create? What does the consumer care about? And the product manager role is almost like, the new GM in a tech environment. And then they're working with the engineers to build out the systems.
Yeah. But everybody knows what a crop top is. That's like a key.
That's true. And many of the male engineers did not originally, but they do now.
So I'm wondering, do you have to convince consumers? You have to sort of re-educate them or train them to behave differently on the platform. What does that look like? And is it a big hurdle to overcome, or is it, pretty straightforward for people when they first experience the yes?
It's been super fascinating. I would say some people get it right away and others just don't. And I would say the younger generation definitely gets it faster and loves the product because it feels so fun and interactive. I would say the older generation, let's call it, sort of 40 and older, even though, many of those are millennials. Yeah. It's hit or miss. Like some of them understand what exists today and that makes sense to them. And some of them, come on and immediately get it and love it. Part of what helps with the app actually is that we onboard you. So we explain what's happening as we go. We ask you questions. So you're starting to get a feel of how this is different from just a traditional e-commerce website. But But it is definitely, I would say once someone actually buys sort of for the first time and they see how the whole system goes, you check out right on the platform, we communicate with you where your product is and when it's arriving to you, then, I think that we find that customers are really sticky. And so it's more about people who come and aren't quite sure what's happening. We continue to think about how to educate them and explain so that it is, or show by doing. But it's definitely a change of behavior.
Yeah.
I know.
Jill, let me ask you this. There's a creepiness factor associated with artificial intelligence that I feel like, surfaces anytime we talk about firms that are collecting information in this way. I'm wondering, just generally speaking, for retailers, is it getting easier or harder in this day and age where we're worried about cyber terrorism and other things, identity theft and things that can come along? How do you think about that as a marketer in this space?
Yeah, so it's definitely a concern. Consumers say in survey after survey that privacy is important to them. However, we've seen consumers give up lots of private information to companies of all stripes. I think the better companies in this area are doing two things. One is opt-in, opt-out, so that consumers have visibility about what they're sharing and whether they want to be sharing that information. And then secondly, if you're collecting data from your customers, how are you using it in a way that's valuable to them? So if the data collection feels entirely selfish, that it's only benefiting the company, then I think we're going to see customer backlash against that data collection. If the data collection, on the other hand, is creating a customized and personalized shopping experience like it is for the Yes, then we see consumers very willingly swiping right, swiping left, doing yes, no. The data collection actually becomes an enjoyable experience. And it's almost the gamification of sharing who you are as a customer with a company to have kind of a shared value creation process. Customers, by sharing their data, are almost co-creating the product and the shopping experience that's being presented to them. So customers see great value in that, then they're willing to share. Yeah. If they're not seeing that value, you're going to see customers holding back or avoiding, revealing their data.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. There's an interesting tension that arises in the case. And this was sort of a discussion that I think you and your partner had, Julie, about, when's the right time to launch? And there's a discussion about, he wanted to launch, sooner than maybe perhaps you did. There was this sort of a conundrum about, we need really good information about our customers so that we can get the AI to work. And we need customers to provide that information. And your point of view was, no, we need to provide a really good experience or we're not going to get those customers back. So I'm wondering how that played out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was really struggling with launching because I wanted the product to be so good the first time you used it. And, then I was at one of my investors is True Ventures, and they do this annual offsite with all their founders. And someone said, if you wait until you think it's perfect, you've definitely waited too long. And that was really helpful to hear, because as the creator of the product, you feel like there's so much more I want to do. And I still feel that way today, actually. And so it was helpful to sort of get that reminder. We actually were planning to launch in March of 2020, and then COVID hit. And so what that ended up doing was we ended up launching in May of 2020. It gave us 2 more months to get just to the point where I felt comfortable. I felt like it was still not quite ready in March, but in May it was, because we took those 2 months to do sort of some final cleanup. And by the time we launched, I felt like the recommendations were good. The experience was good. I was proud of it. And I felt people would come back, even if it wasn't perfect. But yes, that is a big tension. And then that tension sort of continues in the case, because the question is, when do we start investing in paid customer acquisition versus getting sort of the, continuing to make sure the product was working well enough that it would pay back if we spent money to acquire a customer.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask one more question of Julie, and then I think if you folks in the room, we'll open it up to you to ask a couple of questions if you have some, and then I'll close with one more question for each of you. But Julie, let me just ask you, you're working with a lot of brands. You sort of explained how that works before. I'm wondering what the value proposition is to the brands to work through the Yes rather than just going direct to consumer.
Yeah. Well, first of all the brands we work with do have direct to consumer. They need to have a website in order to work with us. So that's a requirement. We use their photography. We basically the way our order system works is it goes back into their system and places the order through their website. So it actually looks like volume for them on their website. But really the reality is that the cost of customer acquisition just continues to rise. And for a single brand, it's quite expensive. And so really they're looking for partners who can help acquire additional customers and drive additional volume in a way that feels brand appropriate and comfortable for them. And when you take a traditional wholesale brand that sells through other retailers, it takes an entire team to manage that account. They sort of pay, they lose 50% of their margin. They ship the product to the warehouse of the retailer. It's a big system that involves a lot. For us, we've made it really easy. The brand doesn't have to do anything. We actually are able to just automatically ingest all of their information. We auto crop and normalize all the data through technology. We assign all the attributes to the product and sell the product. That we share all the data with the brands. We give them insights at the end of the month because we have all this fascinating aggregated data. And so our goal actually is to help the brands thrive as well. We are completely dependent on the brands. They are our business. And we see ourselves as really an additive partner to them. In addition to all the data that we get, we also allow customers to follow a brand right through, directly right through our app. And the reality is, I think, unlike traditional wholesale retail relationships and other distribution channels, we really see ourselves more as a matchmaker, than we do sort of owning the customer data and hoarding it. So we really see it as a win-win for us and the brands when we work together.
Yeah. We've done a lot of cases, cold call episodes on platform companies, and this sounds very familiar to me with other sectors that we've talked about the same sort of setup. So let me ask if anybody in the audience has a question, and if you do, I'll call on you. You just need to press the button down so that your microphone is active, so that we get your voice recorded. So I see one right here.
Thank you, three of you. It's great, very exciting experience. I have a question to Julia, and I'll go to your website. I try to enter my information, and there's a quiz. The quiz asks your brand first, then your style, then your size. Why not your size, your style first, then your brand? Because you mentioned matchmaker, right?
What was the last part of the question? Because I mentioned.
You just mentioned a few seconds ago. You said you serve as matchmaker.
Oh, matchmaker, yeah.
So as a matchmaker, you leave the the promotion of the brand to the last rather than the first, right? That's my question. Thank you.
Yes, it's a great question, and I would say that nothing's permanent. So we're testing order of questions and what do we ask first. The reason that we have brands first is because the customer is coming to a site they've never heard of. And we want them to understand kind of the space we play in. So it's really helpful to show a range of brands. So a customer comes in and says, oh, I understand, generally where I am, what it sells. We never just use the brands that you suggest that you like. We use that as a way to start to understand both your style and your price point. The brand information is sort of the highest signal information we get about you initially. And so if you were to continue to go through the quiz and then you were to start to get results and start to shop, you will see brands recommended based on the brands that you like. So there's a lot of discovery involved, but it's kind of the thing that helps the customer understand and anchor in where she is first, which is why we have it first.
And you, sir, may not find anything that you want to wear at that site. I'm just going to warn you about that now.
Yes, we are all women, sorry.
Jody.
Hi, this may be a question for both Jill and Julie. Curious how, or I know you're probably not in the European Union yet, but the European privacy rules and how this applies to companies like yours and other marketers trying to do things in this area, and whether you're going to start to see more clamp down in the US.
Good question. Jill, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll ask Julie to comment specifically on the yes, but the European privacy laws are the strictest in the world. And so when we think about globalizing marketing strategy, companies have to stop and consider the local laws in every country that they're going to go into. I think for what's good for society and consumers is because of the strictness of the European Union laws. We're seeing many global companies adopt those and then bring those into other countries as well. So I think that gives us extra protections as consumers in other countries. And companies do that so that they can have a consistent global strategy. But definitely something as you start in one geography and move to another, understanding the regulatory environment critical for this type of marketing.
Julie?
Yeah, even though we're US only today, we plan to expand. And so as we were writing our privacy policy, we did use sort of what the strictest standard was to develop it. What I would say is when you're building an experience that's on platform and you're only gathering data for sort of your own use, that's okay. And so as long as, we don't sell data, we don't expose any individual data. And so, for us, the only reason that we collect the data is to make the user's experience better. And so we've set up the system to work that way so that we're not in conflict with even the European system.
Right. So we've got time for one more question. Vijay?
Have you considered helping men give better gifts for the women in their lives?
We have a number of features that we will roll out over time that will, yes, make recommendations for gift giving for an individual who already has a profile on the Yes, among other things.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so one more question for each of you before we wrap this up, and I'll start with you, Julie. It's relatively early days in this journey for the Yes. Things are still taking shape, and I'm wondering what would you say is one of the most important lessons you've learned as you look back over the last couple of years?
Oh, so many lessons. I would say probably just to be practical for the purpose of this case, the thing that I learned that was most interesting is if you're building an e-commerce business, you need to have a website. So the world was moving towards mobile and we built an app first. And apps are closed systems and they're very hard to acquire new customers through. And the reason we built an app is we felt like it was the sort of strictest, confines to basically create a great experience. We wanted it to be mobile first because that's where the world is going. And it's true that the majority of e-commerce sales are now happening on mobile. But if you don't have a website, you are missing out on all of the sort of outlinking opportunities that really allows you to drive consumers and drive awareness across the board. And so we ended up building a website about 6 months after we launched our app. And that really gave us the chance to start to scale the business and grow. So that's probably, in a very practical sense, the lesson that I learned the most.
Right. And Jill, let me give you the last word by asking you, if there's one thing you want our listeners to remember about this case, what would it be?
I think when most people think about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and some of this technological advancement, they tend to think of the efficiency gains that companies can get from cost reduction. Let's take the humans out of the process and that will make us more efficient. I think the real promise of these types of technologies is actually in effectiveness. I think that we can form better and deeper consumer brand relationships, that we can enhance customer satisfaction, that we can create more value for customers through the use of these technologies, because it comes down to seeing you, understanding you, seeing you as an individual and building products and services that absolutely deliver against your needs at that moment. So efficiency gains are great, but effectiveness gains, I think, are the thing that's really going to revolutionize the future of retail through these types of technological improvements.
Jill Avery, Julie Bornstein, thanks so much for joining me on Cold Call today to discuss the Yes. And thank you to our studio audience. Let's hear one more. If you enjoy Cold Call, you'll like other podcasts on the HBR network. They're full of management insights from the best thought leaders in business, all curated by Harvard Business Review, and they're free on Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Brian Kenny, and you've been listening to Cold Call, an official podcast of Harvard Business School. And that's a wrap. Hey, Julie, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. That was really fun. Thanks for
Awesome.
including
Thank
me.
you,
Take
Julie.
care.
Great to see
you, Jill.
Well,
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah.
It's great to have an audience for this.
ups the stakes a little bit, doesn't
It does.
it? Yeah. Great job.